The 1980s introduced a new kind of heartthrob. Macho he-men like Stallone and Eastwood were out. The new guys were more real, relatable, and softer around the edges. They seemed almost attainable. Almost. So where are they now? With the success of 1984's The Karate Kid, Ralph Macchio became the face of the 1980s underdog. His wide-eyed sincerity as Daniel LaRusso made him instantly relatable to millions. He went on to reprise his role throughout the decade, establishing himself as a true blue 80s heartthrob. And one of the best things about Macchio is that when the camera stopped rolling, he was as humble as the characters he played. In fact, The Guardian once dubbed him famously one of the nicest people ever to appear on screen. In turn, Macchio confided to them, "I wasn't the biggest risk taker, but also maybe my caution helped me to stay grounded, so I'm at peace with the choices I made."
Miyagi-Do existed before any of us. It'll be around long after we're gone. The roots are strong, so the tree will survive.
Unlike many of his contemporaries who've tried to separate themselves from their 80s personas, Macchio has happily continued to associate himself with his past work, including appearing in spin-offs and modern adaptations of The Karate Kid. Scott Baio's transition from 80s heartthrob to mature actor hasn't been a smooth one. Throughout the 80s, Baio was a sitcom darling. Audiences knew him as either Chachi Arcola from Happy Days or Charles from Charles in Charge. He had a gift for effortlessly shifting gears from the sweet, puppy-eyed boy next door to the jacket-clad teen icon who oozed cool. He dominated the small screen well into the 90s, but as the millennium turned, so did Baio's career. His public image took a serious hit as a result of allegations of sexual misconduct, coupled with his right-wing political leanings. On Bill O'Reilly's No Spin Zone, Baio said that his rejection by the industry was a consequence of vocalizing his support for Donald Trump.
I knew that I would probably be canceled. I knew that I would be an outcast, and I was right.
Bueller. Bueller. Bueller.
With his cheeky grin and boy-next-door appeal, Matthew Broderick charmed his way into the hearts of a whole generation. He was already an established star by the time his image-defining role in the 1986 teen film Ferris Bueller's Day Off rolled around. To fans of that era, Broderick and Ferris Bueller were two sides of the same coin. Sweet-faced, endearing, and forever with a glint of mischief in his eyes.
Life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it.
Since then, Broderick has basically aged in front of the camera. Unlike many young 80s stars who've tried to shake off their earlier personas in search of new horizons, Broderick has embraced where he came from. In a 2023 interview with The Guardian, he mused, "What's my legacy? Well, I'm Ferris Bueller, I suppose. I have to accept it, and I like it. I've made my peace with it." Matt Dillon was the living, breathing personification of 80s angst. Appearing in films like The Outsiders, My Bodyguard, and Tex, Dillon embodied the era's young people with his effortlessly cool plaid shirt-wearing, leather-jacketed shoulders. The juxtaposition of his rugged good looks and deeply vulnerable persona turned him into a universal crush object very early on in his career. And even though he's no longer the face on every movie screen, Dillon seems to have lost none of his relevance among fans. He's still so handsome that he's captured a whole new, much younger fan base across social media. In fact, Dillon is now internet famous, thanks to a number of viral TikTok videos extolling his good looks. He addressed this new phenomenon at a 2025 Toronto International Film Festival, telling reporters, "I think the thing is just keep your spirit young, enjoy life, make sure you get plenty of exercise."
It's an incredible time to be 22, 23 right now, and to be a young actor, because the films are catering to us.
Emilio Estevez held sway over an entire generation long before his brother Charlie Sheen became pop culture currency. He was a core member of the crew of fresh-faced actors known as the Brat Pack, and with quintessential youth films like The Outsiders, The Breakfast Club, and St. Elmo's Fire under his belt, Estevez personified the sort of rebellious cool that millions of young people during that era aspired to.
We were all pretty bizarre. Some of us are just better at hiding it, that's all.
Even though his resume veered sharply from the filmographies of his brother and father, Estevez contributed some stellar performances to the Sheen family acting legacy. But Estevez's fame eventually faded. In a 2021 interview with Vanity Fair, he admitted, "I've done some forgettable too. There's no avoiding it."
Now here's the long and the short of it. I hate hockey and I don't like kids.
Except for a recurring role in the Mighty Ducks franchise in the 90s, Estevez stepped away from the spotlight and shifted his focus to directing. Now older and wiser, Estevez's look is a far cry from the teenage bad boy he personified in the 80s, but he's still got an edge. Few young actors captured the essence of 80s cinema the way Eric Stoltz did. His flaming red hair, handsome looks, and sizable talent got him cast in a bunch of 80s classics. From his beautiful Golden Globe-nominated performance in Mask to Fast Times at Ridgemont High, Some Kind of Wonderful, and Say Anything, Stoltz was in demand for good reason. He missed out on one blockbuster opportunity, though. He was set to play Marty McFly in Back to the Future, but so-called creative differences led to him being replaced by Michael J. Fox.
What happened was the director fired me.
Why?
He didn't like my work.
Since then, Stoltz has carved out a rich showbiz legacy. He pivoted to directing for television, working on series including Glee, Madam Secretary, How to Get Away with Murder, and more. Speaking with Yahoo Entertainment in 2018, Stoltz explained, "I would hope that being an actor has helped me in my directing, because one thing I try to do is I prioritize performance over technique." Now in his 60s, Stoltz doesn't look anything like his teen idol self, but the commitment to his craft, which made his 80s work so compelling, continues to shine through. Andrew McCarthy has outgrown the boy-next-door charm that endeared him to 80s audiences, but he still has a perpetual twinkle in his eye. The star of classic coming-of-age films like Class, Pretty in Pink, St. Elmo's Fire, and Less Than Zero, McCarthy was a core member of the fabled Brat Pack, albeit one of its less notorious ones. In films dominated by loud rebels and womanizing heartbreakers, McCarthy played the thoughtful dreamer, the shy romantic, the underdog everyone rooted for. Even so, McCarthy has been outspoken about his dislike for the Brat Pack label, which has stuck throughout his acting career. A public reckoning of sorts happened when McCarthy confronted his contentious bratty identity head-on, first in an autobiography, and then with his 2024 documentary, Brats, which he wrote and directed.
Who wants to be called a brat?
The documentary reunited the 80s crew for a trip down memory lane and a long overdue discussion with David Bloom, the New York Magazine journalist who originally coined the term Brat Pack. In the 80s, Matthew Modine embodied a kind of charm that didn't beg for attention, and yet the young star of critically acclaimed films like Birdie, Vision Quest, Full Metal Jacket, and Married to the Mob earned him the kind of admiration that put him miles ahead of his contemporaries. It wasn't just Modine's good looks that made him stand out. The profound, vulnerable characters he chose to play struck a chord with audiences who were apparently happy to trade the high-gloss, flashy heroism of the time for something a little more real. Modine has continued to act in high-quality films ever since, eventually branching out into writing, directing, and producing. Unlike many of his peers, Modine has stayed relevant, likely because he has always prioritized quality work over fame and big paychecks. Speaking to The Guardian in 2024, he shared, "When you're young, you can get by on charm and looks, so you simply must continue to develop your skills as a performer." From The Dark Knight Rises to Oppenheimer to Stranger Things, Modine has appeared in some blockbuster projects, and his career appears to once again, or maybe still, be on the rise. James Spader has ruled television screens for the past few decades. Younger generations know him as the sharp-witted Alan Shore on Boston Legal, or the brilliantly diabolical Raymond Reddington on The Blacklist. But long before Spader became a small-screen star, he was the ultimate brooding bad boy of 80s cinema, appearing in teen classics like Pretty in Pink and Less Than Zero. Spader's piercing stare, suave demeanor, and golden hair became signatures of his public image and attracted a massive fan base early on in his career. He may have been a dreamboat, but his looks didn't undercut his superior acting skills. This killer combo has kept Spader in the Hollywood conversation ever since. He starred in the landmark 1989 indie film Sex, Lies, and Videotape, one of the films that kicked off the golden age of independent film. While the glory days of many of his fellow stars were back in the 80s, Spader is that rare actor who started out as a heartthrob and parlayed his fame into an enduring, endlessly fascinating career.
New guy, what's your name again?
MacGyver.
The name Richard Dean Anderson probably evokes memories of a dashing, quick-thinking, benevolent guy in a leather jacket who could solve impossible crimes with little more than brains, bubblegum, and a bit of string. That was Angus MacGyver, an older, more masculine character than the cash crop of 80s teen idols. Although Anderson dabbled in film, television remained his home base, where he won over audiences with one landmark role after another, most memorably perhaps as Jack O'Neill in the Stargate series. Post-2010s, Anderson's work petered out, and by 2013, he left the business to lead a quieter, domestic life away from Hollywood. He occasionally pops up at fan conventions, but acting seems to be out for the moment. According to a source who spoke with Closer Weekly, he still gets offered guest spots on different shows, but nothing has piqued his interest enough to get him to sign on. Not yet, anyway.
Learn it. Know it. Live it.
Judge Reinhold wasn't the poster boy for 80s rebellion, nor the brooding romantic lead, but his everyman charm and the funny and genius characters he played won over audiences at the time. He hit the ground running with Stripes, then followed it up with hits like Fast Times at Ridgemont High, Beverly Hills Cop, and Ruthless People. Inevitably, Reinhold aged out of teen idoldom, but he managed to tap into a new demographic with films like the Santa Claus franchise. Meanwhile, he continues to appear in film and TV projects, including comedies like Arrested Development. Judd Nelson was the original bad boy of the 80s. He earned the title in the 1985 coming-of-age classic The Breakfast Club, opposite Molly Ringwald. Nelson played troubled teen John Bender, who, despite terrorizing the group of wayward high school kids who found themselves in detention, struck a chord with audiences thanks to his layered performance.
You through? Not even close, bud.
As the decade wore on, Nelson played more bold, reflective characters in films like St. Elmo's Fire, Blue City, and Billionaire Boys Club. He continued to work until sometime in the 2010s, when he stepped back to work on other projects, including writing. Although he's never entirely left the spotlight, these days Nelson's funky glasses and full goatee give him a distinguished look that almost completely eclipses his 80s rebel persona, but he's no less compelling. Jason Patric burst onto the scene in the 80s in the 1987 horror classic The Lost Boys. It was only Patric's third film, but his work as vampire hunter Michael Emerson was so impactful that it immediately put him on the Hollywood map.
Michael Emerson! Come on down!
Patric's brooding charm, effortless cool, and of course his leather jacket made him an instant hit with audiences. Even so, Patric didn't rest on his teen icon laurels. He went on to explore a range of other genres, from crime dramas like Rush and Sleepers to neo-noir thrillers like Narc. As of 2025, Patric continues to work on the big and small screen, including a recurring role on Law & Order: Organized Crime.